Hey everyone, welcome to another recording session of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're going to get into the show here in just a second. Before I officially start recording everything for the audio podcast, I want to introduce a new member of the team. Carrie Ann Auclair is coming to us. She is another resident of the not-so-free state of Massachusetts. And is coming in to join us as a new team member. Rob Morse is also going to be on the show tonight. He's, of course, Self-Defense Gun Stories, Slow Facts blog, and a lot of other stuff. But we will be recording here in just a second. I want to remind everybody, please do comment on the show if you're watching us live on the Facebook page for Polite Society Podcast or the Polite Society Podcast YouTube page. You can comment directly on those videos. I'll get those comments. We'll get them on the air. If you're watching us anywhere else, go to Twitter, tweet with the hashtag PS Podcast. Let me go ahead and get social media set up here, and we'll start recording. Facebook is hooked up. And YouTube is hooked up. Come on, turn on YouTube. There we go. All right. And yeah. So all right, we'll get to some of these comments. We're already getting people checking in and wanting to talk about topics. We'll get to those here in just a little bit. Meanwhile, we're a little late, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to reach over here. As long as Carrie Ann and Rob, you guys are good with it, I'm going to go. All right, here we are. Masada Ayub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masada Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, January the 16th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show we talk with Adam Kraut about so many government officials needing to be sued, and Adam has so little time.
And I'm Carrie Ann Auclair, and we're going to be talking about Illinois politicians grabbing guns where sheriffs and district attorneys don't want to go.
We're also going to talk about the AFT's new pistol brace rule, so climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 647 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. All right, welcome back, everybody. It's Monday night. It's 6 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, which means, of course, it's time for Polite Society Podcast. Thank you to everybody who's already checking in on social media. We'll get to some of that in a little bit. But I want to start off, as we normally do, with personal news about what's been going on with us. Rob, what's been going on with you since the last time you were on, man?
I spent a few days underwater in Mexico, but I'm back on dry land, back to the routine. I was on Bill Frady's Lock and Load radio show. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories, and I wrote for my blog. Paul, I'm going to make a personal pitch here. I'm looking for some volunteers to help on my podcast. This isn't Self-Defense Gun Stories, but if you like that show or want to take part in a podcast, please look for me. Carrie, what have you been up to? And welcome.
Well, thank you. This is awesome. So I'm Carrie Ann Auclair. I am actually the state director for Armed Women of America in Massachusetts. And we've been up and running since April 8, 2019. and I just actually launched our first show called Sisters in Arms, me and my friend Renee Gagney, and it is now on YouTube. So it's Sisters in Arms, a firearm story. So we are a resource to Massachusetts community, and we're very excited to be able to try to help out Massachusetts in any way we can.
Carrie Ann, I noticed you only got 4 episodes, but you have a couple blooper reels out. So it sounds like you're having fun on the journey.
We are. Renee and I have been doing this for a long time, and we have a lot of fun. We really, really, truly do. It's a passion, and we volunteer our time for this. And I'm also the DC State Director for Massachusetts. So, and she's for Rhode Island, so we've been doing this a lot together. It's awesome. Sisters in Arms.
How about you, Paul? Susan?
Well, I am, and Susan is not here tonight simply because we had a connection issue getting her hooked up. But we're both missing seeing our friends at SHOT Show. There is most of the team for Polite Society is at SHOT Show, and Tom Knighton and I discussed this a few minutes ago. Tom and I and Rob and Carrie Ann, we're taking one for the team. The news still has to go out. And so we're here getting the news out, doing what needs to be done while everybody else is down partying and having fun and shooting all the new guns, and we're here hanging out and making sure that everything gets reported. So that's other than missing everybody being down in Las Vegas, that's kind of what's going on with me. So all right, let's do this. We're actually a little bit ahead of time, which is unusual for us. But let's go ahead and go to our first break. Adam is waiting patiently for us. We're going to talk to Adam Kraut about lawsuits, what is active, what's happening with SAF and lawsuits. We'll get to that right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tueller, and led by Network President Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
And welcome back. This is the interview segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us today, my boss, Adam Kraut, is the executive director of the Second Amendment Foundation. We had him on once before in November, and I'm glad Adam you were able to make time to come and talk to us today. Are you down at SHOT Show, or are you going to be at SHOT Show?
Yeah, I'm currently in Vegas.
Okay.
So got a very busy schedule ahead of me this week.
Oh yeah, I can only imagine. Well, and let's start off right off the top. SAF. One thing I promote all the time is we sue their pants off. If the government doesn't allow us to have our rights, we'll sue to get them back. The tagline is winning gun rights back one lawsuit at a time. We've got our news segment here is pistol brace rule with the ATF, and I believe there's already one in the pipeline, if not active, about the pistol brace rule. What's going on there?
Yeah, so there's a couple lawsuits I want to talk to you about, but the first one is with ETF releasing its final rule on Friday. Everybody is, clamoring to see how and who is going to sue ATF. Back when ATF originally kind of looked at the pistol braces, they had released a spreadsheet that had a point system, more or less. And what they were essentially saying was that this is how we're going to look at things and determine whether or not what you built is in fact a short barrel rifle. So there was different criteria, and if your total points added up over a certain threshold, at that point they would say you built a rifle and it's not a pistol and was removed from that. Back in, I think it was January 2021 or sometime in 2020, I can't remember off the top of my head, SAF had sued ATF over that and some other open letters that they were essentially using as a way to skirt the Administrative Procedures Act in the process of rulemaking. That lawsuit has kind of been sitting there. The parties agreed to stay it pending ATF coming out with this final rule. There were several status reports with the court about that. So now that the ATF has released that final rule, I briefly spoke to our attorney, so I don't know exactly what 100% what the strategy here is, but we're going to use that lawsuit as a vehicle to challenge the final rule. So we already have a case in the pipeline in front of a judge with the parties served. And we're going to be working to actively, look at this final rule, review it, see what needs to be challenged, and slip it into that lawsuit and move forward with that. So we're not saying we're going to be filing a lawsuit because technically we already have one. So we're going to be looking to just amend ours and keep moving forward.
Adam, you have to keep track of more lawsuits than I think I can even remember. What are the numbers like right now? Is it 40 plus?
Yeah, so we currently have, I think, just over 40 active lawsuits throughout the country.
Wow.
In various federal courts, and there's a couple state cases as well. Last year, I want to say we filed, it was around 20, give or take two, maybe, one way or the other. So there was quite a bit. We filed a lawsuit on the 12th, so last week, challenging Delaware's magazine ban. We had filed a lawsuit challenging New Jersey's sensitive places law back at the end of December. And in that case, we got a temporary restraining order issued against the provisions that we challenged. So court agreed that we were likely to prevail on the merits and issued a temporary restraining order on certain parts of that law. We only challenged of several of the sensitive places, so things like entertainment, the ban on private property unless they put out signs saying you could in fact carry here, carry in your vehicle, and there was one or two others. So those were temporarily enjoined. The state will have an opportunity to try to present more evidence in the preliminary injunction hearing. But as the court said, they've had several months to kind of compile this. They knew that what Bruin said, and their briefing has so far not really pointed to any analogous history that would allow for those restrictions. So it's unlikely, if I had to guess, that they're going to somehow magically just come up with something. But we'll see. I don't want to put the cart before the horse there.
Now, when you say what you filed 20, you have 40 rolling. Some of these cases can drag on for years, though.
Yeah.
Wow.
So there's certainly there's usually there's about three phases without getting too technical in it, but you have what's filed in the trial court, you have an appellate court that sits above it, and then you have the Supreme Court if we're talking about the federal system. Usually whatever happens in the trial court, one party, whoever loses, will appeal that to the appellate court 99% of the time. The appellate court has to hear that case. If the parties are dissatisfied or one of the parties is dissatisfied with how the appellate court rules, they can petition the Supreme Court to hear that case. The Supreme Court, in the majority of cases that come before it, doesn't actually have to hear the appeal. So they sort through, and they're very particular about their docket. They look for when circuit courts are split, so there's the same issue between several different circuits and they've come to differing conclusions, so there's uncertainty in the law, and the court comes in to smooth that out so everybody's on the same page. There are some cases that are of pressing importance via timing that make their way up to the Supreme Court. But generally, their docket is about 100 some cases a year versus the thousands and thousands of cert petitions that they receive. So they're very picky about what they select. And as far as the length of the cases, where I was driving with this was the trial phase can be somewhat quick. Yearish. It can drag on past a year, 2 years, sometimes even a little longer than that before it even makes it to the appellate court, where depending upon which court you're in, it could be another year and a half, 2 years before you get a decision. So all said and done, by the time you potentially get to the Supreme Court, and that's if it's just straight up and not, being sent up and then being sent back down for correction and then going back up, you can be as long as 5-6 years before it's even at the Supreme Court's door for the court to decide whether it wants to hear the case or not. So it's not a speedy process. It does take time. And
Expensive.
so, as I said, yes, and it's quite expensive. And so, as I said, we have, we filed about 20 new cases last year. There's about 40 active cases. There's at least two more. I think two more that we're actively working on getting ready to file as well. So we're going to keep churning them out as appropriate and challenging laws that are infringing on people's rights.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
one I would believe is in the hopper, and if you can't talk about it, I totally understand. But Illinois has the new assault weapons ban, among other things that they just put through in the last few weeks. I'd imagine that's in there as well.
Yes, yeah, I can confirm that is something that we're actively working on and making preparations to bring litigation about that.
Okay. Let's see. Go, Rob.
Do we have any comment? Well, Adam, this may be way inside baseball. It's certainly over my head, and I'm asking for some help understanding it. Bruin changed the landscape that you work in. It gave you tools you didn't have a year ago. But we're seeing things like, some judges in Western New York will put out a 184-page decision saying, New York, you violated civil rights. And then the appeals court gives like a 4-sentence answer. And then the U.S. Supreme Court didn't hear the challenge, but they said, look at it in an expedited manner. Can you tell me what that answer means?
Yeah, so those are up on what's called interlocutory appeal. So those cases are not final. They're still active at the trial court, and there was an appeal from the grant of a preliminary injunction by the state in those cases. The courts have the right to deal with their dockets how they want. Don't always like the answer of that, but it is something amongst the judiciary that generally they are respectful of that. And the Supreme Court, when it declined to hear, the cert petition that was sent up to it, or not the cert petition, but the petition that was sent up on the Second Circuit's, staying the injunction, they wanted it to develop more at the Second Circuit, let the Second Circuit actually weigh in, but they did caution the circuit that if they take too long, they would be looking at this. So kind of do it quickly, but we'll give you the opportunity to do it before we may step in if that's necessary. So part of that comment was in relation to, to the party, don't be discouraged by us not stepping in right this second. We're going to allow the court a little bit of time to do its thing as a court. In relation to your comment about Bruin, yeah, certainly the landscape changed a little bit, mainly that it's very clear. A couple things are very clear now. First of all, Heller had language in it that was very, prominent, stating that there was a right to bear arms, that, part of the right to keep and bear arms was being able to carry a firearm in case of confrontation. So that was already implicit and said in Heller. Heller also spelled out the test in which Bruin came back and really just in bold blinking letters said this is the test. So Heller already had the text as informed by history and tradition test within it. Bruin just really reaffirmed it because the lower courts for the last, what has it been, almost we're not going to do math, 14 years or so, have said that well, no, it's actually a two-step test, and have been screwing it up the entire time. So I don't think Bruin necessarily changed the legal landscape as much as clarified to the lower courts in particular, this is what you should have been doing all this time. Like, we were very clear the first time, you guys opted to ignore us, so here we are telling you, no, you've been doing it wrong. This is the way you need to be doing it. So it's been good, and we've seen some judges that were appointed by presidents that you would not associate with being firearms friendly, rule in manners which you would not necessarily expect based on their political, appointment.
You get a comment in here real quick. Where did it go? That's not the one I wanted. Here it is. And for some reason, it's not picking it. Oh, I know why. The question is, Diane wants to know, do you think the pistol brace issue will get to the Supreme Court? The Fifth Circuit, I want to mention, did knock down the bump stock rule, the bump stock ban. That was knocked down by the Fifth Circuit. There we go. So go ahead.
I don't know if the Supreme Court will hear the pistol brace issue. So I looked at the Fifth Circuit's opinion, the en banc opinion, and when it struck down the bump stock ban. The rationale contained within that is certainly, I think, a little different than what is here with the pistol brace issue. ATF very clearly looked at the plain language of the statute in the bump stock as far as what was a machine gun, and completely redefined the term, which the court said you can't do that. The plain language of the statute, it doesn't allow you to go that far. There were issues related to Chevron deference, where administrative agencies get deference if there's some ambiguity that needs to be resolved. That they can look at it and try to clarify that. But really, the court kind of hung its hat on the rule of lenity in this case. And the rule of lenity is where if there's a statute that has criminal implications and it's not clear as to how that is in fact how it is criminal, you can't allow for a statute for people to get caught up in where it's not clear that their conduct is in fact criminal. So that's where the court really hung its hat. There were a couple of different reasons it had given for other things as well as to why this just could not, ATF's interpretation couldn't stand, including the fact that ATF for over 10 years had held one position and then magically one day woke up and said, no, we're doing it this way. There's case law out there that says, an agency's switch in determination, less deference should be given to their second interpretation. So the court outlined a number of different ways in which that ATF just couldn't prevail under this. If you look at the opinion, I think 12 of the 16 judges, if I remember correctly, 12 of the 16 judges voted to overturn it. 8 of them, it broke down by how the judges came to their conclusion. So it was a significant chunk of the 16 judges that said, no, this just can't stand. But I think there are some very distinct differences between that and the arm brace issue. So I wouldn't necessarily cast it as a dead ringer for, success on the arm brace issue.
Paul, I think you're muted.
It could be that I was. I shouldn't be now. I think we're pretty much caught up. John Peterson says, thanks for this outstanding, accurate information. And he's an SAF Life member. Real quickly, we've got, as you said, more than 40 active lawsuits, 20 within the last year. I want to take just a second to remind everybody, and Carrie said it was expensive. That's true. How we pay for these lawsuits is memberships. If you're not a member of the SAF, a lifetime membership is $150. A 1-year membership is $15. So please go to saf.org/join. Adam, anything else we're active in that you want to talk about today?
I think the only other thing I would add is certainly, membership's great. We also do love monthly recurring gifts, even if it's $5 a month. That's something, and it does add up over time. especially if there's a lot of people doing it. And there is an option for when you go to the donate part on the website, saf.org, where you can enter in your donation amount and you can make it a recurring donation if you wish. So other than that, we're going to hit the floor here at SHOT Show, talk to people, get a sense as to issues that they're concerned about in their states or other issues that they think might be percolating to the top, and continue to do what we do and sue the pants off the government.
I don't think people understand how much work you guys put in. So
it's quite a bit.
Yeah,
absolutely. A lot.
It's amazing.
And then not being guaranteed to be heard either. So that's another thing, right?
Yeah.
All right, well, Adam, I know you're busy, and we promised to get you out of here in a timely fashion, so I think we're going to do that. We're going to head off to another break. Thank you so much for joining us, Adam. Folks, we are going to step aside. When we come back, we'll have a lot of news to get covered, and we'll do that right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
All right, we are back, and this is a news segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Rob, let's go ahead and we talked in the interview about Illinois, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and just take this first one. Failing politicians need an excuse. So Illinois Democrats passed more gun control laws this week. They outlawed many semi-automatics. Outside the Chicago suburbs, though, Illinois sheriffs said that the law is ridiculous since it only penalizes nonviolent citizens, and criminals, they just don't obey our gun laws. Opposition started with 30 sheriffs saying they won't enforce that law. It's now at least 31. The list is now over 90 sheriffs, chiefs of police, state's attorneys, and county boards communicating that same message. On this, it's nice that the sheriffs and the prosecutors are saying we're not going to prosecute, we're not going to do this. However, the law is still there. And it doesn't really help out gun stores because gun stores still can't sell it. If the state law is that you can't have, you need to register what you have, and you cannot sell, gun stores are kind of stuck. The people that already have ARs, that already have AKs, well, it's great for them that they're not going to be prosecuted for what they already have, but this law is still going to hurt a lot of people. Rob, what do you think, man?
I'm with you 100%. Let's be clear. Chicago politically runs Illinois. Chicago's as corrupt as they come. Anti-gun billionaires buy politicians all over. They've bought Chicago politicians. Therefore, what they say goes in Illinois. And lots of people are outraged, not just the people downstate. I was vacationing in Mexico, and my friends are texting me. Look, I live in Louisiana, and they're going, did you see how crazy this is in Illinois? Okay, so who's going to stop it in the courts? If you want it stopped, cough up cash.
Yeah. We have a lot of members in Illinois. We need more, and we need, like Adam talked about, we need money to get these lawsuits through. 40 lawsuits, and it costs about $1 million to get a lawsuit to the Supreme Court. Not through, to. And so, that's $40 million we need, and more lawsuits are coming for Illinois, for others.
And then they can choose not to hear it, right?
The Supreme Court can, yes.
Yeah, which is frustrating.
Let's
Should
see
we-
here. Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk
Comments or
pistol
want to go to the
braces.
second? You or me?
Go,
What?
Rob.
The Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms put out a 100-page ruling on pistol braces. Actually, it's longer than that. They said that pistol braces made handguns, they're really shootier, more dangerous, and they're going to treat a piece of plastic like it were a dangerous firearm, and they really, really need to regulate them. I just saved you from reading it. I read it so you don't have to. Then the ATF said, but the pistol brace, no, it's really not a firearm at all. Because if it were a pistol, if it were a firearm, well, given all the numbers were sold, then it'd be in common use, and then we couldn't regulate it. Quote, a majority of the existing firearms equipped with a stabilizing brace are likely to be classified as rifles. Most gun owners would be violating the NFA by possessing an unregistered rifle with a barrel of less than 16 inches in length, close quote. That's the ATF's own admission. This ruling was such word salad, it could have been written by Kamala Harris. That level of doublespeak is really a politicized bureaucracy trying to please its political masters. Paul, Carrie, what do you think?
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here and say that, as we talked about in the interview segment, take heart in the Fifth Circuit already ruling that bump stock ban is illegal. This is essentially the exact same thing as the bump stock ban. This is the ATF saying, well, we used to say it was okay, now we're saying it's not okay, and it's not okay only because we say it's not okay. This has not gone through Congress. This
Right.
is AFT themselves doing what they want to do.
But don't you mean ATF?
I thought that Biden changed it, so I wanted to
Okay,
honor
good.
him.
You're honoring that. That's so patriotic of you, Paul. Thank you.
Telling you, man, I got to do what I can do.
And that's used for a lot of people that have like a handicap too. So I
Yes.
don't understand. That is just an accessory. It's crazy.
Well, we did have Adam, not Adam, another, who am I thinking of?
Alex
Uli on, and he described the particulars of the Americans for Disability Act. Turns out they don't probably extend to firearms. If you want to fight that battle, you can. It demands a new interpretation of the ADA.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. It's great to have such smart people listening and commenting. Thank you to our listeners.
It's discriminating. It really is.
Yes, but it
Just
appears that it may be legal discrimination because the people who wrote the law didn't think about firearms owners. Darn it.
of course they didn't.
Let's see here. Where am I at? We already talked about the sheriffs in Illinois. Let's talk about the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court refused to stop the Second Circuit's ruling in the recent concealed carry restrictions in New York State. Supreme said they expect the Second Circuit to provide an expedited review of New York's law. Supreme Court may intervene if they don't. And yeah, like Adam said a little bit ago, they said, we expect you to expedite this case to the Second Circuit. I don't know how fast expedition is going to happen, but I would imagine if it goes a year, I'm going to be stunned. I would say this will come out of the second within the next 4 to 5 months.
And by contrast, look at the Ninth Circuit, the Western states. Oh yeah, they held up 2A bills. 2A lawsuits. Wasn't unusual for them to hang for a year. So the Supreme Court needed to say this, otherwise there's a very fair likelihood that nothing would happen.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Emily Miller?
Yeah, your story. I'll let you take it.
Okay. I have to admit, I really appreciate the writing of Emily Miller. You remember her from DC and the book she wrote, Emily Gets Her Gun? She broke a story that the FBI and the ATF are abusing the NICS system to track individual gun buyers. They've been tracking gun owners. Now they're doing it without a warrant in a coordinated system, according to documents exclusively reviewed by the Epoch Times. Hundreds of pages of documents were produced to Gun Owners of America from a Freedom of Information Act that showed that FBI agents and the FBI were able to monitor specific people through the NICS systems to see, hey, did they buy a gun? Wow, that's illegal. I mean, Congress said, don't do this. And the FBI and the ATF are breaking the law. The records show dozens of ATF agents requesting the monitoring of law-abiding people through the National Instant Background Check System. They call this secret system with the ATF the NICS Monitoring Services. This is a manual daily check of firearm sales to see if a specific person bought a gun, and they'll continue that as long as the ATF agent wants to. They're basically tracking you and I without a warrant, without probable cause to look for any firearms purchase. Could be a trade, a sale of an existing firearm by particular people. That was a claim by Rob Olson, an attorney for GOA. When speaking to the Epoch Times, quote, "There's no legal process here. At best, this is highly questionable, if not outright unlawful," close quote. This part will not surprise you at all. A spokesman for the ATF declined to comment, nor did the FBI. Paul, Carrie?
Yeah, no comment from the FBI, no comment from the AFT. Yeah, I'm not shocked there at all.
Yeah, me neither. Nope.
If you're doing something blatantly illegal, you're not going to want to talk about it.
Paul, do you expect this level of criminality from federal agencies now, where now they may have been doing it for decades? I hadn't seen it decades ago, and I didn't come to expect it decades ago. You think something's changed?
I think over time something has changed, yes. I think that there had been enough people brought in under Obama. There was a break, and then under Biden, and even before Obama, there was there was the break, and then under Clinton, there are Clinton people still in AFT and FBI. I think there are enough people, as a matter of fact, probably a majority of people in those agencies that will just, as a combination between, oh, that's what I was ordered to do, I was just following orders, and this is a good idea, I'm just going to do it, to heck with what the law says.
Carrie, I didn't mean to exclude you.
No. I think it's going against my privacy, and they're going to automatically treat us like criminals. I mean, what if I get a certain type of gun? Are they going to target me because of that? I just think this is ridiculous. I mean, this is my right, my privacy. I should have what I want, and you're already treating me like a criminal. There should be no reason why you're monitoring what I get, period.
Michael DeWine has a couple comments. First one is, changed, yes. Oh, Biden was installed. He also says, so what's going to be done about this blatant, egregious, vile practice by the AFT? Well, first of all, it's going to get brought to light. And then is what's going to happen is lawsuits are going to have to be brought for this to stop.
What's fascinating, I can't imagine, the job I least want in the world is trying to get Emily Miller to not pursue a story. I don't know that that's possible. She's another Cheryl Atkins, or maybe Cheryl Atkins is another Emily Miller. They both, to me, are cut from the same courageous cloth. I would bet that there are whistleblowers inside those agencies who are going, Emily, you think that's bad? Wait till I tell you about. Because, Paul, I bet this stick, if you were an honest FBI or ATF agent, you'd be upset that the agency was corrupted this way.
Oh, yeah. And we need... this is years and years and years ago. I'm going to say this is probably 10 years ago. I was on another podcast. It was breaking technology at that time where people could get comments in as the show was going on. And this particular show, somebody called in and said, look, I want to get into law enforcement. I'm wondering where I should go, where I don't want to be in the ATF, which was its name at the time. I don't want to be in anywhere that's going to abridge our rights. Maybe I should go into something like Park Service. And at that time, I said to that caller, I said, look, we need good people in ATF. We need good people in FBI. We need good people, even at your state police, your local police. We need good people all throughout the system. Please.
At every level.
Yeah. Right. If you're interested in becoming law enforcement, don't just tread as lightly as you can and go into somewhere where you may not have to abridge as much. Go into the belly of the beast. If you're going to fight for our rights in the belly of the beast.
That's right. There's a lot of people that will back you up.
Yes.
Yep.
Rob, do you mind taking the next one as well?
Oh, it's my pleasure to talk about Shannon Watts. You're shocked, right? Well, and if you just came out from under a rock, Shannon Watts is a paid shill for billionaire gun grabber Michael Bloomberg. Well, I said she was. This so-called PR executive from a drug company. She claimed to be a Midwestern mom who was so outraged by gun violence that she came up with a couple $100 million to start a PR firm. Watts spun up the anti-gun rights advocacy organizations. She's stepping down, and I wonder who paid her and who's going to replace her. We don't know that yet.
Well, and
that's a good question.
I talked not on the air, but I talked off the air with Tom Knighton about this, and he wrote on this, and he's got a good take. You know, Shannon Watts is great at dancing in the blood. She's great at putting out tweets instantly when something bad happens. She's not so great at getting gun laws pushed through. What Tom's worried about and what I am worried about is when she retires, who's going to replace her and will they be better than her? I certainly hope they're not.
The devil we know versus the devil we don't.
Yeah.
Right. And they definitely work on emotion, which is,
Well, you know what's interesting? As near as I can tell, for a bunch of lawyers who get elected to political office, a lot of these guys are afraid to be embarrassed. Weren't they ever prosecutors where they, ask tough questions themselves? Evidently not.
You get a couple comments in here. This coming from a Facebook user. If you comment in a group, I may not see it, but I may not see who you are, but I'll see it just like this. He probably retired her, coming from a Facebook user, meaning Bloomberg. And who replaces? Could not be worse. It could be worse for us.
Yeah.
An anti-gunner with great organizational ability and some upper-level political presence. I wonder if some retiring congressman who wants higher office later this is how they put in their dues for Bloomberg to get a multi-million, $100 million
Good point.
political contribution when they want to run for senator. Yeah, I can see that.
Yep.
And I'm half wondering myself if this retirement isn't that she wants to find a nice blue state and run
Right.
for office herself.
Yep. Easy to imagine. Easy. Richard Hudson?
Yes. This is our last story. Wow, we're buzzing through these.
But there are only 3 of us playing tennis here.
That's true.
Okay, so our listeners, up your game. Representative Richard Hudson introduced a national reciprocity bill again in this Congress. The legislation, again, I believe called H.R. 38, didn't it have that number before?
Yep.
Is called the Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act. Now, what's odd, it's got a bipartisan group of 118 co-sponsors. It would make concealed carry permit in any one state valid in the other 49. Just like a driver's license, just like a marriage license. In fact, I believe there are laws that say, wait a minute, in interstate commerce, one state has to respect the licensing granted in another. Hudson had this to say: the bill guarantees the Second Amendment does not disappear when crossing an invisible state line. It protects law-abiding citizens' rights to conceal carry and travel freely between states without worrying about conflicting state codes or onerous civil suits. I'm especially proud to have such widespread and bipartisan support for this measure as I continue working to get this legislation over the finish line. Paul, I think you talked about it, and you said it doesn't have a great chance to make it through both houses and be signed into law.
Yes. What would have to happen is the House to pass it. That's probably going to happen. The Senate to pass it. I would say maybe a 30 to 40% chance. And then for Biden to sign it. And there are 2 chances for that: slim and none, and slim left town.
Yeah, no kidding.
It would have to go into one of these big omnibus bills or into a National Defense Authorization Act, something that he cannot refuse to sign. By the way, that's how we got national park carry out of the Obama administration. It was part of the National Defense Authorization Act. So, am I going to say this will never ever happen? No. I'm just saying that the chances of it are rather slim at the moment. I want to get a couple of comments here before we shut this segment down. Mike DeWine, no, not the governor of Ohio. It's another Mike DeWine. Says, Ralph Nader said for almost 70 years the life insurance industry has been a smug sacred cow feeding the public a steady line of sacred bull. He followed it up with, I say since its inception, the AFT has been a smug sacred cow feeding the public a steady line of sacred bull. It certainly seems in the last 10 years that's absolutely been the case. And then Woods, and the picture for Woods, if you notice down there, is his YouTube picture is a puppy, but Shan will probably do her evil as a lobbyist where the real money is. Well, that's what she is now, is a lobbyist. So I really think she's going for a power grab.
Yeah.
But
I know she's interesting.
I know whatever she's doing, she's going to be stepping down in pay, so that's going to really make her plastic surgeon sad. But
Ow. Tough. Okay. On that note, before we get sued, are we ready to go to the break?
Yeah, let's step off to break. We're going to hear from the complete combatant. When we come back, we've got our DGU segment. We'll get to that right after this. This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by The Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off. All right, we are back. This is the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast, presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. As I get started, these discussions are not legal advice. Some of us are trainers, but this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as information, not as training. And as always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Rob, our first DGU is down in your neck of the woods in Louisiana. You want to talk about it?
Oh, of course. It's before 5 a.m. Actually, rather than an early morning, it's a late night for a 51-year-old man. This guy has a rap sheet as long as Santa Claus's naughty list. He gets into a disagreement with a woman at an area motel. He's offered a ride home by another occupant of the hotel. After being driven to a residence, no one answered the door, and the man returned to the car. That's when he begins punching the driver in an attempt to carjack the vehicle. The driver, and we don't know whether this was intentional or just what happens when somebody's punching you, he drives the car into a ditch. The carjacker then tries to take the car, get it out of the ditch. It's not working. About 3 blocks away, the carjacker now breaks into someone's home. In his hands, he has a shovel and a tire lug wrench. He walks past a sofa. There's a child asleep in the living room, and into the bedroom of the homeowner. The mom wakes up to see this guy holding a shovel in one hand and a lug wrench in the other. The news describes it as a physical altercation. Yeah, I bet it was. According to the sheriff, the homeowner was in fear for her safety and the safety of her children. The defender retrieved a handgun and then fired 1 shot, striking the home intruder. Close quote. She struck the intruder in the thigh. Unfortunately for him, she cut his femoral artery. He died at the scene. He'd been convicted for cocaine distribution in 1997. And he served 21 years for armed robbery committed in 2001. There are no indications that he or the homeowner were acquainted in any way. The homeowner and her family moved out of the mobile home and haven't been seen since. I read part of the police report that said the guy saw the car in the front yard. He may have been breaking into the home to get the woman's car keys so he could steal her car. Paul, Kerry?
As a former I'm going to jump in here quick, Kerry. As a former EMT, I will say this. It only takes you a couple minutes to bleed out from a femoral artery opening. And you've got, I'm going to say, probably 45 seconds to a minute of consciousness. And 3 to 4 minutes of life after that femoral artery has been opened up, unless you can get a tourniquet on there. So I don't know if she was aiming for that. A better aim shot for me would be center mass, but regardless, the 1 shot did its job, and good on the homeowner for having a firearm near her in the bedroom.
Agreed.
Anything you want to add, Carrie Ann?
No, I think it's I think the moral of the story, is that thank God she had a firearm, and it sounds like she had some sort of training, I hope. That's why I think it's so important to continue education, especially if you're going to use it for home protection, self-protection. Thank God she was able to protect herself and her child. I mean, kudos to her. It sounds to me like that was a lucky shot. I mean, you wake up, you're disoriented, you don't know what's going on, you're like, whoa, and wow. She was able to get to that firearm quickly, it sounds like, too, which was another important point.
Carrie Ann, this is the part that is never, ever, ever in the action movies. New gun owners may not even know it exists. A lot of them don't know about safe storage. And, I'll put it in a gun safe. Well, that doesn't work. I'll put it in my dresser drawer. No, that doesn't work either. Someone's got to teach them about rapid access safes, Carrie Ann.
Right. So, I'm from Massachusetts, so you know how that is. I mean, I have to have a firearm locked up even when I'm sleeping. It has to be in my direct control at all times. And when you're sleeping, it's not in my direct control. So I have to have a type of safe that I have quick access to. There's so many different safes out there, and I tell my ladies for the chapter that I teach once a month, there's so many different ones where you have a bracelet, you can go like that, there's push buttons, there's all sorts of things, there's even fingerprints. But with that said, I'm a little apprehensive with just being a fingerprint, because you never know whether or not you're going to have something on your finger that could compromise getting into that safe quickly. So, here in Massachusetts, again, we have to be very, cautious with the law. We have to follow the law, but there's so many different, safes that we can provide buy and put next to our, bed or whatever to make that easy access. Other than actually sleeping with it.
We've got a lot of states that have the safe storage law. I'm going to say if you're going to mandate safe storage and that everybody has a safe, you need to fund that and buy them.
Yeah.
Although I don't know if I'd want a government safe. I'm just saying.
Right. But even to go back to safe storage too, I think people really need to understand that, like you said, every state's different. Massachusetts, we have to have it locked up. But even if a state didn't require storage, I think it's very important to understand too that if you have a child in the home, it's your responsibility as a responsible gun owner to make sure that gun does not get in the hands of somebody that does not need to have it. It's your gun. It's your gun. It's your responsibility as a responsible gun owner. So I think that people misunderstand that safe storage, and they think, well, it shouldn't be in the hands of a child, obviously.
Yeah. We just had a story on, and we've got another DGU, but we just had a story on the bullet, what's now about, it was about an hour ago we covered it, maybe a little more, where there was a 2-year-old that got a hold of an unsecured firearm, shot mom in the foot. Dad grabbed the firearm, ran to a friend's house on foot, said, "Here, keep this," was walking back when police intercepted him, and mom got treatment at that point. But it is to continue that story, why it made the news on the bullet is, and this was a Tom Knighton story on Bearing Arms, when the police got to where the dad took the gun, which obviously dad wasn't supposed to have, they found an AR at the same house, and nobody knows how that AR got there or whose AR it was. And the police just kind of seem to be buying that. And
there's something else I want to comment on, because I've seen it over and over. A criminal gets shot and he runs. He bleeds out. A good guy, a store clerk, gets shot, and rather than, some people will hold up the cell phone and take pictures. A lot of people will say, that looks bad. I'm going to push here really hard so you don't die tonight. Am I right in thinking criminals don't say, here, help me, stop this from leaking?
Yeah,
No.
well, they don't want to go to jail, so yeah.
Right.
So they risk bleeding out. Wow. Well, okay, that's part of the. I guess that's part of the criminal lifestyle. The risks they take, huh?
Let's. We're getting comments in. Let me. And I'm going to go back to the ones about. We have a lot of comments about Shannon Watts. We'll get to those at the end of this segment, but this one is about what we're talking about. So, Michael DeWine says, same with requiring training. Whatever government entity requires it should provide the training free or give people vouchers to provide to qualified instructors. I like the second option better. Just like I wouldn't want a government safe, I'm not all that hot on government training either.
Or government mandates, period.
Yes.
Yep.
Absolutely. Let's go to our next DGU. This one's out of Des Moines. Now I'm going to take this one. Last week, 2 people repeatedly walked back and forth in front of the Hubble Tower apartments. Apartment manager Sherry Lindbergh, with a young son by her side, opened her door to inquire as to whether there was a problem. The female in the couple grabbed her child. Miss Lindbergh was not letting them take her son, so she also grabbed the child. And the difference here, the mom was armed. Sergeant Paul Prezarek of the Des Moines Police Department said it certainly looks like the big turning point here, the pivotal piece to keeping her child safe, was the fact she was lawfully armed with a handgun. She produced it and told them, "Let go of my kid." The pair ran off. The apartment manager called Will Hunter, a security guard who patrolled the area of the skywalk that joins downtown buildings. It took Lindbergh 3 sentences to describe the woman, and the security guard immediately knew who she was. Security service routinely takes the names of people who cause problems there. Hunter called the police, gave them names, and then tracked down the child snatchers until police could take over. He called the police, he tracked them through the skywalk to a downtown restaurant and onto a bus. The skywalk is considered a public space. There's a homeless shelter nearby and a lot of mental illness in the area. The couple was arrested and charged with felony child stealing. The woman is also charged, big shock, with violating her probation.
I'm shocked.
Yeah. Rob, do we want to bring up Pogo? I don't know if Carrie Ann has ever been in contact with Pogo.
No.
It's a saying here, pants on, gun on. If this woman had her firearm in her purse, if she had it in a rapid access safe at her desk, if she had it in a locked drawer at her desk, this story might tragically have ended very differently.
Yep.
Thank you for carrying
Absolutely.
on, Bonnie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Pogo is pants on, gun on.
Pants on,
Gun on.
Yeah.
gun on. Pants on, gun on. I like it.
So.
You know what? It's funny because both stories had a common denominator, right? Which was they were criminals that were let back out on the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just it blows my mind because I hear these stories constantly, especially with domestic violence. You know, they threatening to kill this poor woman. They get back out on the street, and they were able to succeed. So I don't understand, because I think they're so, keen on, gun violence. Why aren't they not looking at the fact that these criminals are being put back out on the street? Mental illness. It just doesn't make sense to me.
I absolutely agree with that. I will say this, though. The previous story, looking back at it, the man had been convicted for cocaine distribution in 1997, and he served 21 years for an armed robbery in 2001. So if he served 21 years, you're not going to get an armed robbery conviction for a lot more than that.
Louisiana is the wrong place to commit a crime. They sentence heavy down here. Wow.
So I will say this, that we did keep that guy off the streets for 21 years.
Sure.
But in this, I do not know what the lady who violated her probation, what she was on probation for. But I would guess Iowa, they don't generally look kindly on people trying to steal children there. I'm thinking that both of these people are going to be behind bars for a good long time now.
And what I'm wondering is this mental illness? Is this drug addiction? Just what the heck's going on? Is it a schizophrenic break? Can't tell you.
Right.
News stories didn't
Right.
say.
Yeah. And yeah, get a couple comments in here. And before I do, I want to say, generally there's not going to be a toxicology report because that requires a death. But that's Rob's. I wonder what the toxicology reports is going to say. That's one of Rob's things that I just stole.
Lines.
But I would imagine that another common denominator in between the stories is going to be drug use.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So
And you know, people don't think that these things happen, and I think that's why it's so important to talk about these. This is awesome. I love these stories because it really makes people realize that, oh wow, that was in my neighborhood. Oh wow. You know,
Michael DeWine
and understand.
Michael DeWine says, "Good job, Mom." And somebody on Facebook that I can't get their name says, "People violence," and that's really what it is. This is people violence. It's not gun violence. It's people being violent against other people.
Exactly.
All right, let's go back.
Spot on.
Paul, we should note it. We should note this too. This was no shots fired,
Yes.
which is the vast majority of self-defense gun use. In some sense,
Right.
if the crazy lady hadn't grabbed a kid, we'd never hear about it.
Yep.
Right.
Let's go back to, we've gotten all kinds of comments about Shannon Watts, and I want to run through a few of them here because we're actually just running a little bit early. But let's get Mike DeWine back talking about that one. I agree. Bloomberg funding her campaign if she runs for office. Yeah.
Yep.
And Facebook user says Bloomberg can hire a team of 100 placed all over the U.S. and stir up issues. That's what Mom Demands is. That's exactly what Mom's Demand is. Let's see her.
Agreed.
And Mike DeWine says maybe he has inflated her ego enough for a POTUS run, said in jest. I don't know. Maybe she's anticipating Biden shuffling off and going away, and she might be hoping for a nomination for vice president from Kamala. Yeah, just kind of spitballing.
An
things
ambassadorship, something like that.
here. And okay, well let's do this. Let's go ahead and we're going to step aside to our final break. When we come back, we're going to talk about what we've been up to in media, and we'll shut the show down. Right back, right after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, welcome back to our final segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. As I usually do, as we start this segment, I'm going to say, Rob, what's been going on over at Slowfax, bud?
Paul, you'd be shocked, but I've made bad decisions. I think we all have. Even on good days. Well, being the chief law enforcement officer at a school district where that district was attacked by a celebrity mass murderer, that is a horrible day for anybody. Uvalde Schools Police Chief Pete Arredondo, he was in that position, and he made some bad decisions. He recently talked about it. We get to look at what he said. Look, he made some mistakes, but it would be an even greater loss if we don't learn from his mistakes. That article is called Emotions, Police Chiefs, and Celebrity Murders. My articles are at Clash Daily and at Amaland. They're also at my blog at slowfacts.wordpress.com.
I would like to remind everybody, John is not here tonight, but please do go check out his blog at onlygunsandmoney.com. He's at SHOT Show right now. Most of our team is at SHOT Show right now. And
so envious.
Yes, absolutely.
One day.
Well, I've been there many times before, and to be honest, when I was told, "Yeah, look, we're doing something different this year. You're not going to SHOT Show," part of me was, yeah, I'm okay with that, because you go down to SHOT Show, there's 65,000 industry professionals there, right? I can't count the number of times I've been muzzled, and not just in the SHOT Show floor, but I'm also talking about at range day.
Oh.
On the show floor, every firearm is supposed to have the firing pin removed, and there's not supposed to be any ammo on the SHOT Show floor. But I've been at range day. I've been muzzled, and countless times when I've been on the show floor, I've been muzzled. And combine that with the SHOT Show crud that goes around every year. Combine that with just all those people in that limited space.
Paul,
I miss my friends, but
right. I'm going to take, and I feel exactly the same way. On the later days of the show, it's thinned out a little bit, and you realize there's a brain trust on that show floor. The exhibitors and the attendees, and sometimes you can ask some really knowledgeable people some pretty simple questions, and if you're willing to listen, oh my gosh, it's like being in graduate school.
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
Thursday and Friday were my favorite days.
Yep. Not for my feet, but for my head.
Yes. Yes.
That's awesome.
Carrie Ann, do you want to tell us when is your next? First of all, plug your show, and when's the next episode coming out?
All right, so it's Sisters in Arms. It's a firearm story, and we actually just recorded our 5th and 6th episode. So we're really excited because we've been covering a lot of different topics here in Massachusetts. So we talked about Massachusetts law. We talked about the importance of education. We actually interviewed with Gun Owners Action League, John Green, the director of education, did a show on pepper spray, and Charlie Cook, of course, he was on. So we're really excited because we want to be a resource to the Massachusetts community, because we feel it's really important to be not only just a resource, but coming from a woman's perspective and showing what firearm ownership looks like, and have a safe place for people to ask questions. So even if you are not a firearm owner, but you're considering it, or you don't understand it, or maybe you're on the other side, you have a place to go. You have an email you can go to and ask questions. So we're on YouTube, and Sisters in Arms 2022 at gmail.com.
All right, let me get this up.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you for letting me come on the show. Appreciate
John says, I've watched Carrie's show, Sisters in Arms, and it's outstanding. Highly recommended.
Thank you so much. That's awesome. Right. Thank you.
For my part, I'm going to say this is just the beginning of the broadcast week. Rob is joining me tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central Time for The Bullet, and he's also joining me Wednesday at 5 p.m. Central Time for The Bullet. Thursday, I do not know what's happening yet, But I'm pretty sure if I leaned on Rob, he would come back again Thursday. But we will have shows 5 p.m. Central Time every day this week. And Saturday, we've got a really, really cool weekend edition of The Bullet at noon Central Time. And that is with Tony Simon and Charlie Cook, who will be just coming back from SHOT Show.
SHOT Show.
And we'll have one other person there. I just don't have that one booked yet. So, but do come join me 5 p.m. Central Time for The Bullet and noon on Saturday. That does wrap up another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Adam Kraut for joining us today. So for Amy, Dana, Tracy, John, Susan, Amanda, Robin, Charlie, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are clear of recording. Stream is still live, so I'm going to say again, I've been sitting in this chair for multiple hours now, probably about 5 hours. My backside hurts. I need to get out of this chair, so there's not going to be much of a after show. I do want to say publicly while it's still streaming, Carrie Ann, great job today. You're a great addition to the team, and I'm glad you're aboard.
Oh, thank you. I know I didn't feel comfortable commenting on everything, but I'll get there.
That's why
I just wanted to kind of figure out the show.
Sure. And that's why there's more than one of us here. So we are going to go ahead and shut the streams down. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Thank you for commenting. And please do come join me 5 p.m.